the quiet elder veteran. Thomas Murphy had been cleaning the Naval Special Warfare Command gym for 3 years, and most people barely noticed him. At 62 years old, he moved through the facility like a ghost, pushing his mop bucket down the polished hallways before dawn each morning. The young Navy SEALs would nod politely when they passed him, but their conversations never stopped. To them, he was just another invisible worker keeping their world running. Thomas preferred it that way. He had learned long ago that being overlooked was often the safest place to be. Every morning at 4:30, he would unlock the gym doors and begin his routine. First, the locker rooms needed attention, then the weight room, where chalk dust and sweat created a daily layer of grime on every surface. The cardio equipment required careful cleaning, each machine wiped down with disinfectant that stung his weathered hands. The work was honest and quiet, 2 things Thomas valued more than most people understood. His previous job at a civilian gym had ended badly when his supervisor discovered his military background and started asking too many questions. Questions about where he served, what he did, why he never talked about it. Thomas had learned that some stories were better left untold, especially his own. Commander Sarah Mitchell ran the training facility with military precision. She had been watching the new cleaning contractor for months, noting how he arrived early and stayed late without being asked. Unlike the previous cleaning crew, Thomas never left corners unswept or mirrors streaky. The gym had never been cleaner, and the young SEALs had stopped complaining about the facilities. What caught her attention most was how Thomas moved through the building. He walked with purpose, his posture straight despite his age. His eyes constantly scanned the environment, taking in details that most people missed. When equipment was left out of place, he would return it to the exact correct position without checking any manual. These were not the movements of an ordinary janitor. Thomas kept his personal life simple and separate from work. He lived in a small apartment 15 minutes from the base, drove a 20-year-old pickup truck, and bought his groceries at the same store every week. His neighbors knew him as a polite man who kept to himself. The apartment was clean and organized, with very few personal items visible. No family photos, no military memorabilia, nothing that might spark unwanted conversations. His daily routine never varied: work, grocery store, home. Sometimes he would sit on his small balcony in the evening, drinking coffee and watching the sunset. On weekends, he would drive to the beach early in the morning when the tourists were still sleeping. The sound of waves helped quiet the memories that sometimes pushed too close to the surface. The gym had become his sanctuary in an unexpected way. Being around active military personnel felt both comfortable and painful. These young SEALs reminded him of himself decades ago, full of confidence and purpose. They trained with an intensity he recognized, pushing their bodies and minds beyond normal limits. Sometimes, watching them, he would remember what it felt like to be part of something larger than himself. Thomas had developed small relationships with some of the equipment. He knew which treadmill had a loose belt, which weight bench had a slight wobble, which locker door would stick in humid weather. The building had become familiar territory, every corner and closet mapped in his mind. This knowledge made him efficient, but it also made him feel useful in a way he had not experienced in years. The younger SEALs had begun to trust him with small things. They would ask him to keep an eye on their gym bags while they showered, or mention if they had dropped something in the weight room. Some even said good morning when they arrived for early training sessions. These tiny interactions meant more to Thomas than they could possibly know. Commander Mitchell noticed these small connections too. Good leaders paid attention to how their people interacted with everyone around them, not just their superiors. The fact that her SEALs trusted the janitor enough to leave personal items around him spoke well of his character. But something about Thomas Murphy still puzzled her. During his lunch breaks, Thomas would sit outside behind the building, eating a simple sandwich and drinking water from a thermos. He never used his phone, never read newspapers, never seemed to need entertainment. He would just sit quietly, observing the world around him. Birds, weather patterns, the way shadows moved across the parking lot. This level of attention to environment was something Commander Mitchell recognized from her own training. One Tuesday morning, Thomas arrived to find that someone had attempted to break into the equipment storage room during the night. The lock was damaged but had held, and nothing appeared to be missing. Security would need to investigate, but Thomas spent extra time that morning checking every corner of the building. His inspection was thorough and methodical, examining areas that most people would never think to check. When Commander Mitchell arrived and saw the damaged lock, she found Thomas mopping nearby. He mentioned noticing some scratches on the door frame that were not there the previous evening, and pointed out scuff marks on the floor that might indicate which direction the intruder had approached from. His observations were detailed and accurate, delivered in a calm voice that suggested experience with such situations. The security investigation lasted 2 days, during which Thomas continued his normal routine without seeming nervous or curious about the process. He answered questions when asked, but never volunteered information beyond what was specifically requested. Commander Mitchell found this level of discretion impressive and somewhat unusual for a civilian employee. As weeks passed, Thomas began to feel more settled in his position than he had anywhere else since leaving the military. The work was physically demanding enough to keep him tired, which helped with sleeping. The environment was structured and predictable, which calmed his always alert nervous system. Most importantly, he felt like he was contributing something valuable, even if his contribution was invisible to most people. The gym's atmosphere reminded him of the positive aspects of military life without the pressure and danger that had eventually worn him down. These young SEALs were preparing for challenges he understood intimately, though he would never presume to offer advice. His job was to maintain their training environment, and he took that responsibility seriously. Thomas had one habit that he thought went unnoticed. Every morning when he cleaned the memorial wall dedicated to fallen Special Operations personnel, he would pause for exactly 60 seconds. His cleaning technique in this area was more careful than anywhere else, each name polished with special attention. He never left water spots or streaks on the glass covering those names. Commander Mitchell had observed this daily ritual for months. The memorial wall was cleaned last in Thomas's routine, and he always spent those extra moments in silence before moving on to his next task. She had never seen him read the names closely or show obvious emotion, but his respectful attention was unmistakable. The mystery of Thomas Murphy was becoming more intriguing to Commander Mitchell with each passing day. His work performance was exceptional, his character seemed solid, and her instincts suggested there was much more to his story than appeared on the surface. But Thomas had built his walls carefully, and they would not be easy to breach. The new beginning, 3 months after the accident, Thomas had settled into a comfortable routine that felt different from before. Commander Mitchell's knowledge of his background had not changed his daily responsibilities, but it had created an atmosphere of mutual respect that he had not experienced in years. For the first time since leaving the military, someone understood who he really was without asking him to be more than he wanted to be. The change became evident in small ways. Commander Mitchell would occasionally ask for his opinion on facility security matters, always framed as casual conversation rather than formal consultation. When new equipment arrived, she would mention that his input on placement and safety considerations would be valuable. Thomas appreciated that she never made these requests feel like obligations. The young SEALs had begun to notice something different about their janitor as well, though they could not identify exactly what had changed. Thomas still cleaned quietly and efficiently, but there was a subtle confidence in his movements that had not been there before. When they asked questions about equipment maintenance or facility procedures, his answers were more detailed and knowledgeable. Petty Officer Williams, who had found Thomas after the accident, started having brief conversations with him during early morning training sessions. Thomas would answer questions about proper equipment care and facility safety with an expertise that seemed unusual for a janitor. Jake began to suspect that Thomas had more experience with military operations than his job title suggested. One morning in November, Thomas arrived at work to find Commander Mitchell waiting for him with coffee and a serious expression. She explained that the base was expecting a visit from Pentagon officials who would be evaluating the training facility for potential upgrades. The inspection would be thorough, and she wanted to ensure that every aspect of the operation reflected the highest standards. Thomas understood immediately what she was really asking. This was not just about cleaning floors and emptying trash bins. The inspection would include security protocols, equipment readiness, and overall facility management. His experience with military evaluations could be valuable if he was willing to share it. Over the following week, Thomas helped prepare the facility in ways that went far beyond his official duties. He identified potential security concerns that had never occurred to the regular staff. His knowledge of how inspectors would evaluate equipment storage and maintenance procedures proved invaluable. When he suggested minor adjustments to traffic flow patterns and emergency exit accessibility, Commander Mitchell implemented every recommendation. The Pentagon inspection lasted 3 days, during which Thomas maintained his normal cleaning routine while quietly observing the evaluation process. He noticed which areas received the most scrutiny and which aspects of the operation impressed the visiting officials. His years of experience with military bureaucracy allowed him to read the subtle signs that indicated whether the inspection was going well. On the final day of the inspection, one of the Pentagon officials approached Thomas while he was cleaning near the memorial wall. The official had noticed Thomas's respectful attention to this area and asked if he was a veteran himself. Thomas confirmed his military service but kept his response brief and humble. The official thanked him for his service and for maintaining such a clean, well-organized facility. After the inspectors departed, Commander Mitchell found Thomas finishing his duties in the equipment storage room. The facility had received the highest possible rating, with specific praise for maintenance standards and security protocols. She thanked Thomas for his contributions, but he deflected the credit to her leadership and the dedication of the entire staff. That evening, Commander Mitchell submitted a recommendation for Thomas to receive a Civilian Service Award for his outstanding performance and contributions to the facility's mission. She was careful to frame the recommendation in terms of his work as a janitor without revealing details about his military background that he preferred to keep private. The following month brought an unexpected opportunity. The base commander announced plans to create a new position for a facilities security coordinator, someone who would oversee maintenance operations and ensure that all civilian contractors met the highest standards. The job would involve working with multiple buildings and supervising other service personnel. Commander Mitchell offered the position to Thomas privately before it was posted publicly. The salary increase would be significant, and the responsibilities would make better use of his skills and experience. Thomas was honored by the offer, but asked for time to consider whether he wanted the additional visibility and responsibility that would come with a supervisory role. Thomas spent a week thinking about the decision. The new position would mean leaving behind the simple anonymity he had valued as a janitor. He would need to interact with more people, attend meetings, and take on leadership responsibilities. But it would also allow him to contribute more meaningfully to an organization that had given him a sense of purpose. He accepted the position with the understanding that his military background would remain a private matter between himself and Commander Mitchell. His transition into the new role was gradual, allowing him to train his replacement while learning his expanded duties. The young SEALs who had grown accustomed to his quiet presence were sorry to see him move on, but proud that their janitor was being promoted. In his new position, Thomas discovered that he enjoyed mentoring the civilian staff members who worked throughout the base facilities. Many were veterans themselves, struggling with their own transitions to civilian employment. His quiet leadership style and genuine understanding of their challenges made him an effective supervisor and advocate. 6 months into his new role, Thomas received his first formal performance evaluation since leaving the military. Commander Mitchell noted his exceptional attention to detail, his ability to anticipate problems before they occurred, and his skill at building trust with both military personnel and civilian employees. The evaluation recommended him for additional training in facility management and security protocols. Thomas had found something he thought he had lost forever when he left active duty, a sense that his experience and skills could serve a meaningful purpose. He was no longer hiding from his past, but he was not defined by it either. The tattoo on his neck remained mostly hidden under his collar, but he no longer felt the need to be ashamed of what it represented. On quiet Sunday mornings, Thomas still visited the beach to watch the sunrise and listen to the waves. But now these moments felt peaceful rather than lonely. He had built a new life that honored both who he had been and who he was becoming. The gym where he had once pushed a mop had become the foundation for a second career that gave him pride and satisfaction. Commander Mitchell often reflected on how much Thomas had changed since that day she first noticed his unusual skills and instincts. The transformation had not been dramatic or sudden, but rather a gradual emergence of confidence and purpose. She had learned as much from watching his journey as he had gained from the opportunity to use his abilities again. Thomas Murphy was no longer just a quiet elder veteran trying to stay invisible. He had become a respected member of the base community, someone whose contributions were valued and whose experience was appreciated. The young SEALs still greeted him in the hallways, but now they also sought his advice on practical matters and listened carefully to his suggestions. The memorial wall that Thomas had cleaned so carefully for years now included a small plaque recognizing outstanding civilian service members. His name was not on it, as he had specifically requested that his contributions be acknowledged without drawing personal attention. But Commander Mitchell made sure that his impact on the facility and its mission would be remembered long after he eventually retired. Thomas had learned that hiding his past was less important than finding a place where his experience could serve others. The Navy SEAL training facility had given him more than just a job. It had given him a community where his unique combination of skills, humility, and dedication could make a real difference. He had found his way home.